Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So as you guys can see, I am standing in my driveway, and the reason for that is I'm going to show you guys the real DIY way on how to build custom floating shelves. Now, I'm not talking about that I'm going to use a hammer and a chisel like in the Stone Ages. I'm just referring to I don't have a custom carpentry workshop. So I'm going to show you a couple of tools that I'm going to be using, and then I'll also give you guys some tips and advice along the way if you don't have all these tools, how to get it done. So let's get into it. So one of the tools that is very handy is this miter saw. Obviously, it does have multiple purposes. One thing that's going to be your friend and you can do a lot of things with is the circular saw. I do have a table saw that is very helpful when you find your angles. I'm going to be using those construction screws to build the framing of the floating shelves. So you'll need a couple of drills, measuring tape, pencil, a quick square to make sure your stuff is 90 degrees, and of course safety glasses if you work with power tools. Do have some sawhorses to make like a work table, and then a couple of clamps. So now that we got all the tools, the materials is gonna be very simple. So I got a couple of planks of 2x2, which is actually 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch. I just took a couple of 2x4s and ripped them in half. That way it's a little bit cheaper to make up for the cost of these oak boards. They are $90 a piece. It's 3/4 thick. And that's the look we are going for with the floating shelves. Let's get started with building the frames for the floating shelves. Okay guys, another quick tip. If you are using a chop saw and you're cutting these little pieces, I am gonna build about like 9 floating shelves, like tall ones, short ones, all different sizes. However, they are going to be the same width, which is 10 inches. So I'm gonna need a bunch of these. So I put this little stopper in here. So I marked everything exactly the way it's supposed to be, so I don't have to measure and mark every time. I just put my wood up against it very gently. I don't have to bump it so it loses its measurement, and then I just chop away, and that'll kind of save you a bunch of time. So this is going to be the basic framing for the floating shelves. I have my long piece at the back, long piece in the front, and then my supports on the inside. When you build this framing, ideally you want your spacings to be equal size. So something I would recommend you guys to do before you start framing this in is to see where your studs is going to be. So that's the reason for this lines. I went ahead and marked all the areas where my studs is going to be, because that's where my anchors is going to be, that's going to support this floating shelves. And then afterwards you can put in your support systems and make sure the support system is not in the way where you want to put your anchors to secure this. I am going to pre-drill all the holes where I'm going to secure it. Because this wood is on the thinner side, I do not want to take a risk for the wood to split, and keep it as strong as possible. Okay guys, so I got the framing of the floating shelves done. As you guys can see here to my left, I built a total of 9 of them. So I can actually go ahead and put professional floating shelf builder on my resume and go look for a job once I'm done with this project. So with that being said, it's time for the next step, which is going to be the building of the actual shelves themselves. So let's get right into it. So this is going to be my long pieces that I'm going to use for my long shelf, and I'm gonna also cut it right in the middle. That way those pieces are a lot easier to work with when I'm using my table saw. Same for this side. I'm going to also put this through the table saw, and it's just a lot easier to do on a table saw when it's smaller, more manageable pieces, because again, we're on a driveway and not in a workshop. Okay guys, I'm ready to make my first cut. I am going to be using this straight edge over here. If you do not have that, you can just use a piece of plank and clamp it down. That is sometimes even better than just this. Have your safety goggles, safety first, and then your circular saw. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing cut out. So my framing is 10 inches and I made these shelf planks 12 inches. So that gives me a little bit of room in the front here, so I don't have to force it or be on the limit. And then we also still gonna do a 45 cut here to put in that front piece. So we're gonna do both 45 and 45 on this one, and that way we can have our front piece in. I would also like to mention is These shelves are gonna go in between two walls, so I don't have to have a side piece. So I'm just gonna have top, bottom, and a front piece. So I've got my table saw set up here. There's one of three ways you can set it up for 45 degrees. You can use a digital gauge. Just make sure your table saw is level, otherwise that might not be accurate. The other way is to use a quick square. You can gauge it with the quick square because that is 45 degrees. Or the third option is you can just trust that that is 45 degrees and work with that. So I quickly want to show you, if you don't have a table saw, you can still use your circular saw to get that 45-degree angle. You can adjust your circular saw to the angle that you want, and that's another option. It is a little bit more trickier, so definitely take your time if you're gonna do that, but you can definitely get it done without a table saw. Just gotta be careful and a little bit patient. And there's a 45-degree angle. Okay, so now it's time for the front piece of the shelf. So I'm just gonna take my measurement right there. I'm gonna make it 1/8 of an inch wider, just to have a little bit of room in between this, so I don't fight it when it needs to go in. Now that we got everything cut and ready, it's time to put it all together. So I got my middle section here, which underneath it I put some tape. So once we got it glued in, we're gonna fold it together, and the tape is gonna help it to stay together and not fall apart while we nail it in. Okay, so this is gonna be the bottom of the shelf, and I'm gonna get it as close to the edge there possible, and then just lay it down on the tape. And now it's time for the top piece of the shelf. Okay, so I'm going to be using this Tide Bond wood glue. I would recommend definitely use a wood specific glue. That way your bonds is going to be a lot stronger. So let's flip this up and see what it looks like. Take this holder. Now I'm just going to use the brad nailer and nail it in. Okay, so now the next step is to mount this bracket for the floating shelf. So I got my line measured out here. That's my horizontal line where it's going to go on. And I've also marked where my studs is, so I know where to put in the lag bolts that's going to hold up the whole thing together. So I pre-drilled some holes, as you guys can see there, where the studs is going to be. And that's where I'm going to drive my screws through. So I'm quickly going to show you guys how I get that done. Okay, so I'm using this rugged structural screws. They are lag bolts, so they are very strong, and they should be enough for what we need to get done. So I'm going to start with my middle one first. So that's going to be my first one. So I'm going to enter it, not tighten it all the way, but get it started. So before I tighten it all the way, I'm leaving it a little bit loose so I can start the other one and make sure it's level. And there's our framing in, and now it's time to put in our shelf. Next step is to slide in our shelf. So let's go ahead and get that in. There we go, first shelf in. I'm also going to show you guys from a different angle how I secure these framings to the wall. So first, that's where the stud's going to be. So I'm going to make a pilot hole and just enter my lag bolts. I put my level on before I secure the rest and make sure it's level. You guys can be the judge of that. Looks pretty good to me. And then I secure the rest. But something that might help you make it a little bit easier is when you come to assemble your shelves. I would definitely say without the tape where you kind of fold it together, I found a technique that is a little bit easier for me personally. That's just my opinion. You can still do the tape where you lay down and you fold it with the tapes. However, the tape sometimes is a little bit floppy and it's a little bit tricky to get it all lined up. What I found is this corner of the table or bench that I'm working on works really good. So what I like to do is I glue my seams. I will show you guys here in a second. I glue my seams and I kind of lay it across. So when I pick it up, I can get it in the perfect position I can nail a couple of nails in here and also in there, and then I can move it around and then also finish up the nailing. Another mistake that I made with the shelves that goes in between walls, I was thinking of that I do not need to put in the sides because it's just going to slide in, so I built my framing wall to wall. However, what I found was it is a little bit easier when you have the sides in, when you assemble it. So I recommend you to do that. I did use the supports to kind of keep them from flopping all the way down. It just made it a little bit trickier when it comes to handling and inserting it. With the support of the side piece, it is a lot easier. So if you build your framing to ensure that you have a gap for side pieces to go in, even if it is in between walls, and it's a lot more sturdier than without it. So I'm going to show you guys the technique that I kind of managed to figure out as I was building these shelves, and it definitely made my life a lot easier. So let's get into it. Okay, so first thing is, this is the bottom part of the shelf and this is going to be the front. So I'm going to put some glue into these seams and put it together, and I'm going to show you guys how I get it done. So what I like about this table supports it, so when you lift it up, it stays in position. So you can line up your angles perfectly before you nail it, and then it's just a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead, line up the front where there is angles. So I make sure these seams are perfectly touching together, and then just secure it with a nail. When you nail this in, you kind of want to angle your nail gun so it rather shoots it to the inside, because you don't want those nails popping out on the front side of your shelf. And now it's in and we can move it around. It's not going to go anywhere, and we can secure it all the way through. And now I'm going to insert this side support piece there. So I'm going to glue the seams again. And then basically the same thing. You line it up exactly where you want it, and then you just secure it with your nail gun. Once you line it up, you just nail it in and you're good to go. And there you go. Now the finishing touch is to slide it in, or slide it on, however you want to look at it. So I'm going to secure it with 3 little wood screws just on the sides and in the middle. So I'm going to pre-drill it and then just secure it. Okay guys, that's going to be a wrap for this video. What do you guys think of these floating shelves that we got down here? The ones in the back, I think they came out really good. I have to say, the last one turned out a lot better than the first one I actually did. And that goes with anything, practice makes perfect. So for the DIYers out there, you just gotta keep on keeping on. So let me know what you guys think of these floating shelves in the comments down below. If you guys find this video helpful or entertaining, please consider subscribing. Until next time, goodbye.